Hey, this is Zulem Urbina, and tune into the relay for the latest news in boxing all around the world. Thank you for supporting myself and other female boxers. We truly appreciate it.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this, an encouraging bit of news. Siblings Sebastian Fundora and Gabriela Fundora to share October 8th card in Carson, California. This is smart from Showtime. I like this. What's more endearing than a fighting family? A brother and sister who have so much in common. It's endearing, like a Pixar movie. Sebastian and Gabriela Fundora will share a card for the first time as pros. The talented siblings will appear in separate bouts on an October 8th show to take place at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California. Opponents have yet to be learned for either fighter, though Freddie Fundora, the father and head trainer for Sebastian and Gabriela, confirmed that both will fight on that date, with Sebastian to headline what is believed to be a Showtime telecast. Sebastian Fundora, 19 wins, no losses with 1 draw, 13 knockouts, fought just once before at Dignity Health Sports Park, earning a 4th-round stoppage of Jorge Cota last May 1st. The win helped propel the 6'5.5" southpaw onto the contender stage, having since earned 2 more step-up wins. By far, the biggest win of Sebastian's career to date came in his most recent start. The 24-year-old from Coachella, California, traded knockdowns and a lot of leather with top contender Erickson Lubricant. Erickson Jiffy Lube, before earning a stoppage win after 9 rounds this past April 9th at Virgin Hotels, Las Vegas. The epic battle remains a leading contender for 2022 Fight of the Year, with Fundora also claiming the WBC interim middleweight title, junior middleweight title, which earns a place in line for undisputed champion Jermell Charlo. Gabriela Fundora, 8 wins, no losses and no draws with 4 knockouts, a 5'9" flyweight, turned pro at this very venue. 2 weeks later, scoring a 4-round decision win and then repeating the feat on site just 6 weeks later. Each of her first 2 fights took place on the non-televised portion of Showtime events, likely resuming the same role with her placement on the October 8th show, though with the possibility of her fight appearing on a YouTube stream. I think it would greatly benefit Showtime to invest in a couple of female fighters, Gabriela Fundora included. You got a lot of guys over there at Showtime. A lot of guys at the PBC. They want an arm and a leg every time they get out there. And those kinds of operational costs, what these fighters and their teams want in terms of guaranteed cash, guaranteed purses, it can't always be justified. They need to start investing in the future. And things are changing. Look at Top Rank. They've got 2 female fighters, 2 female champions under contract. Top Rank has both Micaela Mayer and Sinicia Estriadia. Golden Boy Promotions has Marlon Esparza and Yo Costa Valle.
Para Limousino también.
Esa mujer está rica. I mean, it's not just Matchroom anymore. It's not just Matchroom trying to bring attention to women boxers. There's more of a conscious effort all over the place, and Showtime and PBC, they need to get with the times. In her most recent start, Fundora outpointed Lucia Hernandez over 8 rounds on July 28th in Indio, California, mere minutes from the family's Coachella hometown. The fight took place on a Golden Boy DAZN Fight Night show, with Father Freddie and Brother Sebastian both working her corner. We've known for some time now that the women's boxing scene across the pond, across the Atlantic Ocean, is more fertile than it is here in America. There really are that many more opportunities. Sky Sports and Boxer have an entire stable of female fighters. Wasserman's got a few girls. Hell, even Queensbury's got one. They've got Raven Chapman. Don't forget that Queensbury is set to air Amandia Serranio's next fight, her upcoming unification match with Sarah Mahfood. The fledgling promotional outfit, Pro Bellum, they've got a couple of female fighters. They've got Estelle Mosley. They've got Bree Howley. Lisa Whiteside. Everywhere you look, everybody is getting with the times, and it's about time that the people at the PBC and Showtime followed suit. Gabriela Fundora debuted as a professional last year, fought 5 times last year. She's already seen action 4 times this year, was last in action late last month on the 28th against Lucia Hernandez. The story here isn't just Gabriela Fundora is returning to action. The story here isn't just her next fight, whoever she's fighting. This could herald more of a push from the people over there at Showtime and the PBC to perhaps invest in a stable of Valkyries of their own. A cheaper alternative, I think, more cost feasible than attempting to stage fights for Adrian Bronier, who was supposed to be in action this upcoming weekend against Omar Figueroa, but for one reason, some reason or another, he decided to pull out. The money that they've spent attempting to stage fights for a fighter like Adrian Bronier the last couple of years. Last year's Giovanni Santiago fight. You tell me, what the hell did Showtime and the PBC get out of that? And what did that cost you? You know what I think? Instead of frittering away dollars on a guy who has so obviously peaked already, you need to reallocate those dollars, reallocate those resources to groom you one or two good female fighters like a Gabriela Fundora or a Zarina McCoy, and it won't cost you as much. I'd wager those two fighters would appreciate it more, and they'd be a lot more ambitious with that opportunity than Adrian Bronier is. For frittering away dollars on Adrian Broner fights and Jermall Charlo fights, why don't you invest in a couple of Valkyries that won't cost you as much? The fights they orchestrate for those guys are filler fights anyway. Not high-profile fights. You're burning through cash just trying to keep those guys busy, and they ain't got much of a ceiling anyway. They're in their 30s. What you ought to do is sign a Gabriela Fundora, a Zarina McCoy, a Diana Estrada, do a multi-fight deal. Telling you, it won't cost you what you're spending on Charlo fights and Broner fights. Use the Showtime platform to increase their appeal, and maybe you get yourself a star out of it, a star with more upside in their career than what's left in Adrian Broner's or Jermall Charlo. Now, keep your eyes peeled for the ring return of Gabriela Fundora alongside her brother Sebastian this fall on Showtime. In other news, Deontay Wilder plans to fight till age 40. Comeback was a hard decision. What's that, 3 or 4 more years? At least for now. Deontay Wilder's out of the world title picture. He is out of world title contention. Could that change? Wilder himself says, "I know I'm great," told Kenneth Buhari and Michael Rosenthal on the PBC podcast. "I have 3, maybe 4 years left, and then I'm completely done. I've done great with my finances. I make more money outside of the ring than inside of the ring. To even get in the ring, I need to have a certain minimum. It feels good to make a decision about when and what you want to do. I'm not coming back to the sport because I need to, and it's a great feeling to be on the opposite side because most of the time, other boxers need money." We talked about that in my previous video. How, according to Deontay Wilder, he's actually making more money outside of the ring than inside, and we know that inside the ring, Deontay Wilder is at times a 7 and even an 8-figure fighter. So what could he be doing outside of the ring that's getting him comparable or more money? Real estate almost immediately came to mind. The devastating knockout artist, who'll turn 37 years old 1 week after the Helenius fight, said he's disconnected from boxing during his break. He's been out of the loop. I didn't at all keep up with anything in the sport. My wife goes to fights and watches way more than I do. When I'm away, I'm away. I go missing in action on purpose. I'm a Renaissance man. I'm more than just boxing. I'm more than just an athlete. There's nothing wrong with that. He's got to have a life outside of boxing because boxing ain't something you want to be doing when you're 50 or 60 years old. So in reference to Deontay Wilder saying that he might stick around till age 40, well, what would the next 3 or 4 years of Deontay Wilder's career look like given what the last couple of years have looked like, how the last couple of years have been? Wilder has been based in Las Vegas recently and has been training as well. At the end of the day, I knew that I had to come back because I motivate and inspire so many around the world. So here I am. I am very excited to come back to Brooklyn and continue to present my greatness to the world, said Wilder. I've been enjoying myself with my family and kids and loved ones. It was a hard decision of coming back. What should I do? Basically, what I wanted to do. Now I'm here. I got the blessing from my family, and that's basically all I need. Now I'm ready to inspire and motivate. You're looking at a guy who has it all, and I say that with a smile. The last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, we talked about how in all likelihood, Deontay would end up fighting Robert Helenius, and that story checked out. That forecast, I should say, and we can at least forecast who Wilder might fight beyond that Robert Helenius fight, provided that he gets himself back in the winner's bracket. In all likelihood, he fights Andy Ruiz, should Andy make it past Luis Ortiz, who would be a common opponent between Andy and Deontay Wilder. Wilder. They could do a battle of the former champions. Both Deontay Wilder's ring return and Andy's are being carried by Fox. The Andy Ruiz versus Luis Ortiz fight is being billed as both a Fox pay-per-view and a Fight TV pay-per-view. That pay-per-view actually has 2 distributors. Fox is sharing it with Fight TV. I don't know why. I can only imagine that because Fox isn't spending all that much money on boxing these days, maybe Fight helped. Maybe Fight gave the PBC a little something for the rights to help offset the operational costs of putting the card together. I'm just bouncing ideas around because it's not normal to have 2 U.S.-based distributors for a pay-per-view, and Fight TV does have the rights to the fight. Here in America they do, and some other foreign markets. They're carrying it, and you don't usually see that, so there's got to be a reason. That reason might harken back to a tweet I talked about here on the channel from boxing insider Marcos Villegas, who said that Fox ain't shelling out big cash for production when it comes to those PBC shows. Fox ain't throwing out money. Haven't you noticed that most of the PBC shows we've been seeing have been on Showtime, not Fox? Outside of the odd pay-per-view, the occasional pay-per-view, Fox has not released a comprehensive schedule of fights the way they used to 1 or 2 years ago. Many boxing insiders speculate that this could very well be Fox's last year in the sport of boxing. We'll see if those rumors check out. If they do... Well, Wilder's not talking about retiring, right? Right. And so long as he stays in the winner's bracket and he keeps fighting, his fights are going to need a home. So will he migrate back over to the Showtime platform if Fox decides to pack it up and they terminate their relationship with the PBC the following year? Or will Fox push to only carry certain fights, like Wilder fights, fights where they feel they may actually get something back, get something in terms of a return? Wilder hasn't boxed on Showtime since the Brazil fight. Approximately 3 going on 4 years ago. He's been off the platform ever since that Brazil fight. The Luis Ortiz pay-per-view, Luis Ortiz rematch, that took place on Fox, as did the 2 Tyson Fury fights that followed. Those were joint pay-per-views between Fox and Top Rank. Future's murky. Deontay Wilder says he plans on fighting for another 3 or 4 years till he is age 40. So, outside of a Hellenius fight, which is already scheduled, and a potential Andy Ruiz fight, who could we expect to see Wilder fighting in 2023, 2024, 2025? Well, I've talked about Shelly Finkel's relationship with Frank Warren, how they're amicable, and how most people seem to forget they negotiated that first Tyson Fury versus Deontay Wilder fight amongst themselves. They got that over the line. So you can anticipate that, given Shelly's interest in putting Deontay in there with Daniel Dubois, that's a possibility. And yet another possibility is the winner of Joseph Parker versus Joe Joyce. I think Joe Joyce is going to win that fight, and Joe Joyce is a Queensberry Promotions fighter. The same way that Tyson Fury was a Queensberry Promotions fighter. Still is. And like I said, Shelly Finkel and Frank Warren, they got that fight over the line amongst themselves. Perhaps we see something similar with either Daniel Dubois or the winner of Joyce versus Parker, provided the winner is Joe Joyce. I'm not saying that he's at the top of the list. I'm just saying that he could be in the running because he's one of Frank's boys. Wilder's coming back. And he's not coming back for the Filip Hrgovics, Arslanbek Makhmudovs, and he's not coming back for the Jalalovs of the world, the Martin Bacolis. Certain elements have to be in play for the future when it comes to Deontay Wilder, and one I think is foreign rights, the foreign rights to a fight, UK rights and US rights, having a liaison between the 2 markets. We know that Shelly Finkel doesn't have a good working relationship with Eddie Hearn, but he does have a good relationship with Frank Warren. Yeah, Shelly's been talking that AJ versus Wilder stuff, but they're never going to concede being the B-side to Anthony Joshua, who is so obviously the bigger draw in victory or defeat. They're never going to make that concession. Now, with Joe Joyce would be the B-side, the clear B-side to Deontay Wilder, as would Daniel Dubois. You see what Wilder says? He needs a certain minimum just to get in the ring, just to get in there. And neither Fox or Showtime are going to throw cash, big wads of cash at any fight, just any fight. The fight's got to be marketable. There has to be a chance of a return, and with either Joe Joyce or Daniel Dubois, that could happen. Anthony Joshua, there's just too much friction. Eddie Hearn very recently stated that he reached out to Shelly Finkel to start a preliminary dialogue in reference to such a fight, and he said that he couldn't get an answer, he couldn't get a call back. So even though Shelly's been saying that AJ versus Joshua is still a big fight, whether Joshua wins this weekend or loses, you see where we are. We are now where we always were. And if Deontay Wilder plans on boxing for the next 4 years, well, I think that Joe Joyce and Daniel Dubois, if the guy's going to keep boxing for the next 3 or 4 years, you're going to need 3 or 4 years worth of opponent options. And some opponent options are more feasible than others. I think Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce, those are two guys that we might end up seeing Deontay Wilder fighting. And those ain't bad fights, by the way. And just in keeping with the theme of all things heavyweight, Deontay chimed in on this upcoming weekend's mega rematch, saying, "I'm going with Oleksandr Usyk. He just looks even more confident, more so than ever now." And you look at Anthony Joshua, and he looks like a different man. He looks broken. You could say the same thing about Deontay Wilder, but that's his take. That's how he feels about it. Some might have felt that Deontay looked like a broken man after that second Tyson Fury fight going into the third. That's how Deontay feels about Anthony Joshua going into this rematch with Oleksandr Usyk. Deontay Wilder was asked if he could line up Oleksandr up for a right hand and knock him out, and he said anyone can be lined up for it. Certain people are trickier than others, some are more simplistic than others, but when you do it right, all can be lined up. Deontay Wilder's signature punch is the straight right hand. Often dubbed the Southpaw Killer, the straight right hand does seem to be a punch that a lot of Southpaws are susceptible to, provided you can line it up. And given that Deontay Wilder's never had the best feet, Oleksandr Usyk's got great feet and great movement, a great gas tank. This ain't just any southpaw we're talking about. This ain't Artur Spilka. This ain't Luis Ortiz. This is an Olympic gold medalist, cruiserweight undisputed champion, 2-division champion overall, a reigning heavyweight champion. Yeah, Wilder's seen southpaws. He's seen southpaws before, but he ain't never seen nothing like this. Not like this guy. He really hasn't. If you thought that Tyson Fury was tricky, Oleksandr Usyk would be a puzzle that Deontay would struggle to solve if you actually could get that fight over the line, if you actually could get those two guys in the same ring. But alas, I'm not holding my breath for that to happen, because if Oleksandr Usyk emerges the victor this weekend, the feeling is that he may cross over to the top rank side of things to try and get a Tyson Fury fight, an undisputed heavyweight title tilt, provided Tyson Fury actually ends his quote-unquote retirement. If he decides to stay retired and he vacates the WBC title, it's going to go to Wilder. And forgive my pessimism and skepticism, but if Deontay Wilder sees himself becoming a 2-time heavyweight champion, 2-time WBC champion, I don't think it's going to be his goal. I don't think it's going to be his aim to collect the other 3 alphabet titles, because he'd have to go through Oleksandr Usyk to do it. $100 million was not enough to get Deontay Wilder in the ring with Anthony Joshua. How much do you think he'd want to get in the ring with the man that beat him? We know that Oleksandr Usyk doesn't come with the same added value of an Anthony Joshua. He doesn't have the same following, the same marquee value. So the Wilder people, in a situation like that, they might look at Oleksandr as being more trouble than he's worth. In a situation where Tyson Fury stays retired, vacates the green belt, and Wilder picks it up, it would have to be because Tyson Fury didn't care enough to come out of retirement for an Usyk fight. It would have to be because he looks at Usyk as being more trouble than he's worth. And Deontay Wilder, he might share in that sentiment, if that's the way the cookie crumbles. Not jumping to bold conclusions and making bold proclamations. I'm just saying, in a scenario like that, that might happen. I'm just saying, let's not get ahead of ourselves and get excited at the idea that Deontay might fight Oleksandr Usyk. Don't hold your breath. I'm not. I don't view that fight as being likely at all.